Magic. This is my third take doing this. Guys and gals, just a quick reminder before you watch this video, do not forget to subscribe for more content such as this, and if you do so, please click the little bell symbol right next to the subscribe button. You'll get notifications on your phone, on your tablet, and on your laptop for when you can get more content from this beautiful face once more. How's it going, guys? David here. You're like my little London near attire. At least I think that's what London people used to wear back in the 1920s. Anyways, I like this type of coat. It's really cool, really woolsy, really warm, and also an awful lot of characters in Red Dead Redemption wear it, so I figured, what the hell. And I do believe that gentlemen need to remove their hat while indoors. Actually, this is precisely the reason why I don't like to take off my hat. But the real case of the matter, however, is that I just got back from watching Fantastic Beasts, The Crimes of Grindelwald. It's Vald. I don't know why they put a W. British people are weird. But here's my review for the sequel to the first Fantastic Beasts from 2016, because Warner Brothers is the Dark Lord of unnecessary sequels. But here we are. My girlfriend's a huge Potterhead, so it's kind of mandatory that we have to check it out. I mean, she didn't get a tattoo of Harry Potter for nothing. So, after finally watching the movie, which continues the story of the Dark Lord Wizard Grindelwald. Yes, before Voldemort, there was Grindelwald, and he was the main baddie around town, or at least within the wizardry world, with very malevolent plans. However, various different ministries of magic ranging across the globe, from the British ministry to the American ministry, even the French ministry, have all banded together to put a stop to his crimes, as noted in the title, and some of those folks involved in that effort are Newt Scamander, our main character played by Redmayne, along with his very diverse cast of friends, and his old mentor from Hogwarts, a very young but very nimble Albus Dumbledore. So yes, we are taking it back. We are taking it back to Hogwarts. We're taking it back to Dumbledore in his prime years and his connection to Grindelwald and why it is that things transpired the way they did, as foretold in some stories that we've had within the Harry Potter books and movies. But that's the thing. There were stories. It wasn't until that Harry Potter franchise started making that money that J.K. Rowling was then locked in a basement and was forced to make 5, yes, count them, 5 of these fucking movies. And we got Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them, which really piqued my interest because it was the first of the series of films. So I figured, okay, let's at least give this one a shot. Watched it and I thought that, okay, I wasn't as in love with it as I was with the Harry Potter movies, at least some of the Harry Potter movies. There's a couple of Harry Potter movies that I liked that I wasn't huge fans of, but I was like, oh, okay, like Order of the Phoenix to me is like the worst, and I still think it's a competently well-made movie. I actually kind of prefer the first two, which are consensually thought to be the weakest movies. I actually prefer those over Order of the Phoenix. Anyways, my ranking of Harry Potter movies aside, I was going into Crimes of Grindelwald a little bit much more open than it was with the first film, because with the first film, we had to get used to the notion that this wasn't Harry Potter. It wasn't going to be in British states or the British countries. It wasn't going to deal with Hogwarts. It was going to be its own beast, no pun intended. And once we got a taste of it and the way that it wrapped up and how it was kind of dropping hints as to what's going to become in the sequel, I was like, okay, still very interested, still very curious. I'm willing to lay down my hat for it. Now, are you guys familiar with a term called sequelitis? Because if you don't, just go through that pantheon of Warner Brothers movies that I kind of showed earlier in the review, and now you know why. Sequelitis is a term coined by various critics. I don't know who exactly came up with it first, but many movie critics and people who analyze movies and really break them down have come to use the term sequelitis for a movie that tries too hard to be a sequel, where they try to overstuff it, they try to put so much, and they try to tie so many things within itself and within future movies that it's setting up in a whole broad spectrum of a universe. And unfortunately, Fantastic Beasts, The Crimes of Grindelwald, falls victim to it. And you know that you're in trouble, where I'm constantly considering checking my phone during the movie inside of the theater, but I know not to be an asshole because I forgot to bring down the brightness on my screen, so I'm not exactly gonna prop it open and have this thing shine on my face and shine on a bunch of people's faces in the back. I'm not gonna be that person. Okay? I'm not gonna be a peasant. But boy, was that thought lingering in my head. And that was because the plot for this movie starts off fairly simple, and yet it just spirals out of control, where it's just like, oh, remember that one character is doing this, and then that other character is doing that. Oh, and then this over here, do you remember this? No, because you're jumping and jumping and jumping and jumping, and I legitimately lost track of just so many things. And it just goes into various directions and extents that I just wasn't completely prepared for a movie taking place in the universe of Harry Potter to really do. The other movies were a bit more straightforward. I mean, yeah, it was following the rules of a universe and of a lore that it set up for itself. Here, if something just sort of happened within the plot or within the circumstances of the situation our main characters fall into, the explanation is, as I mentioned at the beginning, magic. Swear to God, there were certain things left very much closed at the end of the last movie, and yet, without spoiling anything, this movie literally says, oh yeah, fuck that. Yeah, that thing that you thought had happened to this one character, it never happened. We're just gonna completely disregard it. That's not how movies work. That's not how movies work. That's not how good movies work, when you really stick by your guns. It's something that I often criticize Marvel for doing, because as much as I love Marvel and the cinematic universe they set up and how they were able to really hone in the formula to create a great pop culture, AAA, big studio, big budget film, the one thing that I often criticized mainly in phase 1 was that they were undoing certain debts and undoing significant turning points that they started to lack weight over the years, that thankfully they wised up come Infinity War. This movie did not learn from that. Here in 2018, they're still going back to those tropes that I've seen in sequels from like the 80s or the 90s, where it's just like, oh yeah, that one thing. No, yeah, they're back. Like Nightmare on Elm, Friday the 13th, Halloween level, where you thought a character had bit the dust and they just come back and without any explanation except for just a runaway line. It's just like, come on, that's not how it goes. And what I found to be truthfully much more insulting than my own intelligence as to why I was questioning these characters returning, or these certain plots that seemingly got wrapped up at the end of the first one that were very poignant, only to just be unraveled, was just how pandering sometimes the movie was to Harry Potter fans. I feel like my girlfriend got violated. That's a bad analogy. Okay, let me redo that. I just felt I was nervous for my girlfriend's mindset's safety, in the sense that I just feel like she got duped, she got bamboozled, hoodwinked, because there was just so many scenes just pandering, where it's just like, that Harry Potter character or that Harry Potter Easter egg, that little thing that you remembered, look, there it is. You ain't getting me. And it's probably because, I lean more towards the fantasy worlds of Tolkien with Lord of the Rings, and of course Star Wars. Harry Potter was probably in the lower ranking, where I really enjoyed the movies, and a couple of them I loved as movies, not just as Harry Potter movies, but as movies in general. And there was one particular movie that I completely turned around on, Prisoner of Azkaban. I really did not like Prisoner of Azkaban when it first came out in 2004. Since then, however, completely a 180 on that movie. I really love that movie. I just said freaking. Why did I just do that? But the thing about those movies was that there seemed to be a game plan for them, especially since they were books prior to them. And what I was telling my girlfriend in the car on our way home that really worked with those movies as well is that we're literally watching these characters grow from movie 1, where they're literally kids, to adults, or practically adults, like 17 or 18 years old, at the very end of Deathly Hallows Part 2. And so we felt like there was an actual journey with comeuppance, with trials and tribulations, and with really heartwarming moments that felt earned. Here, we have a cast of characters that are not exactly young, but they're not old, so they have an even bigger uphill battle, and that's to be likable, and that's to be characters that we can care for and gasp whenever something kind of bad happens to them, or at least be in a trance. Like, this movie's trying to cast magic within the subjects of its story. The movie needs to cast a spell on us, or at least on a person like me who's not humongously in love with Harry Potter, and you got to make an effort for it. definitely did not feel like there was an effort on my whimsy to fall in love with the movie. It felt more like they were going for my wallet, like the Niffler going after Jorley. And I'm not necessarily knocking these actors, because they were ultimately the saving grace for me. Eddie Redmayne, I still like him as an actor. I still don't know if I like this character, only because he's just got that nervous thing. And everything that I don't know. It's just he needs to break out of that. In the first movie, it's fine. Now we're in the second movie, and it's time to let that shtick go. He's got to get mad. He's got to show emotion, and that doesn't happen here. I don't know if this is considered a spoiler, but he is one note from the beginning of the movie to the next. Newt, he's got to do something by the third movie. Otherwise, he's going to lose me. And it's going to become one of those movies where like the central character is just not really interesting. It's all about the secondary characters, which is why I found myself much more entranced with Jude Law's portrayal of Dumbledore, which I actually think was rather great. And only because of that leads me to my other complaint about him, which is that he's not in the movie that much. Some of the scenes that you see him in the trailer are actually about it, save for a couple that do tread on spoiler territory. But he did bring something new to the table for his version of Dumbledore. Like, his portrayal of Dumbledore leaned more towards Richard Harris than Michael Gambon, I think is his last name. I can't remember. But the guy who played Dumbledore throughout the almost every single movie except for the first two after Richard Harris's passing. I think I buy Jude Law's version of Dumbledore a bit more like Richard Harris's. However, every so often he takes some inspiration from Michael Gambon. So I'm like, okay, I like this take on the character. I can easily see him being the headmaster of Hogwarts, and he feels right at home. So Jude Law did a spectacular job. As far as Johnny Depp goes, however, I think he can be great. I just don't think his character of Grindelwald was written very well as an antagonist, because the entire time it's one of those cases where the villain is talked about so hyped up, but then when he shows up on screen, he doesn't do as much as you're hoping him to. He doesn't live up to the hype. He doesn't, he's good, but everybody talks about him like, oh my god, Grindelwald, he needs to be secured. He needs to be like, oh my god. And I'm just like, I think there's still potential for him to be that big baddie that everyone is saying. But lo and behold, we're going to have to wait until the third fucking movie, because rest assured, the movie's going to make it clear that you're going to have to wait for some big, true moments in this whole prequel story that they're setting up for the Harry Potter universe to come to fruition in future movies, not necessarily this one. Catherine Waterston as Tina is still here. She was from the first movie, and she was alright. I mean, every so often they will give her and Newt this subplot that is borderline horrible, only because it's that thing where one of them could say something and just solve the entire thing, but instead they keep interrupting each other, or something keeps interrupting them, and you're just like, come the fuck on. And then you have some other people here and there that would make surprises where I'm like, okay, kind of cool, especially Zoe Kravitz. Rather good British accent there she's got, Zoe. So I was pretty impressed by that. And then we get over to Dan Fogler, who, again, his inclusion in this movie makes no fucking sense to me if you know how the first one ended. But thankfully, because of how I felt about Newt, I really appreciated Dan Fogler's character. He there were moments where he was actually smarter than Newt, and he was the one to be like, hey, come on, man, I think we got to do this. And I was like, all right, I can't believe I related more to Dan Fogler than I did to our main character. And then one of the things I've always appreciated about this wizarding world, and it's not just the brand for this brand new line of movies that are now under this brand name, it's also just how they would use magic, and how awesome it was whenever they would come up with like a new spell or something, especially within the Harry Potter movies when they first started. Within those first 3 or so, magic was awesome. Magic was the shit. Here, it's used freely in a way that it's kind of polarizing. At moments, it's cool the way that they are able to maneuver other things, and then at other times, like I mentioned before, magic. It's a very quick fix, and it provides more plot holes than it does to solve them, and ultimately it just adds to the muddled mess that is the script. And I think it's all stemming from the script, because the actors are doing a terrific job. There's moments of good cinematography and good camera angles, but at times this really does feel like the movie where Warner Brothers is at again, trying to make another sequel, And as I stated in my first impressions as I was walking out of the theater, if you are a die-hard Harry Potter fan, if you are the type like my girlfriend who buys the sweaters, gets the tattoos, has the memorabilia, goes to Universal Studios not because you want to go to Universal Studios, but because you want to go to the Wizarding World inside of the castle, and just for that, and spend all day there, then definitely check out Fantastic Beasts. You don't need me. This is one of those movies that's critic-proof for that particular community. However, if you fall in the demographic that I do, where I'm very interested and intrigued by the Potter universe and the mythology, but you're not necessarily in love with it, you just want to know more about it, then I want to say you can give this movie a shot, but considering it suffers from a very severe case of sequelitis, and you are all too familiar with said cinematic disease, then, and also considering you still got 2 more movies before the grand finale, I wouldn't necessarily blame you if you waited until the home release to check this out at home, because you'll get just as much as excitement as it is to watch it in the theater. So I'm going to be giving Fantastic Beasts: The Crimes of Grindelwald a very, very high, enthusiastic, and still kind of recommendable, but albeit 6 out of 10. That was okay, but you guys really need to fix that script. You know you have a problem when a certain scene reminds me of the Fiona, Shrek, donkey scene from Shrek 2. That about does it for me, guys. Thank you guys so much for watching. Please let me know in the comments below what you guys thought of Fantastic Beasts: The Crimes of Grindelwald in the comments below. Keep it spoiler free, even though this movie does its best to drop some serious bombshells. But to me, they did more confuse than to shock. Anyways, give me your guys' impressions. Make sure to like and share this video to show your support. And of course, subscribe for more reviews in the future. Until next time, guys. See you all later. I will now separate. The Peter Parker that we know and love was still there. There was never a point where I hated him. I actually enjoyed watching him on screen. Multiple times he actually did manage to make me laugh with a couple of the quips. Like I said, I felt like he was quipping a little too much, where his hit and miss ratio was a little higher than past Spider-Man that I have watched, both in live action and cartoon.
Ah! Nice move, Webhead. Now you know what a wrecking ball feels like. If I wanted to ride the Tilt-A-Whirl, I'd have gone to Coney Island.